My daughter called me in the middle of the night. Dad, I'm at the police station. My husband hit me, but now he says I attacked him, and they believe him. When I arrived at the station, the officer on duty fainted, stammering, "Sir, I didn't know it was your daughter." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The door opened before I could knock a second time, and there she stood, my Jacqueline, my only child, looking like someone had drained half the life from her body. 3 months. That's how long it had been since I'd last seen her face, and the change hit me like a fist to the sternum. "Dad?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Those eyes had dark semicircles beneath them, purple-gray shadows that makeup couldn't quite hide. I pulled her into my arms. She felt like bird bones wrapped in skin. When had she gotten so thin? "Jackie's been cleaning all day for your visit," Brent's voice boomed from behind her, too loud, too cheerful. His hand landed on her shoulder, possessive, territorial. Come in. How was the drive from Riverside?" "It's Jacqueline, honey," she murmured, stepping back from my embrace. "She's so formal sometimes." Brent laughed, steering us into the house. "I keep telling her to relax." The house. The one I'd given her for her wedding 5 years ago. This beautiful 2-story modern home in La Jolla, with its ocean views and imported tile floors. It looked like a photograph in a design magazine, every surface gleaming, every pillow positioned at exact angles. Not a water glass or book or sign of actual human habitation anywhere. Sterile. That was the word that came to mind, like a hospital waiting room. "Let me show you around, Dad." Jacqueline moved through the rooms with nervous energy, her hands fluttering over already perfect surfaces. She straightened a couch cushion that didn't need straightening. "We repainted the dining room last month. Brent chose the color. Takes a lot of effort to keep her organized." Brent grinned at me, man to man, as if sharing a joke. "But we're getting there." I watched my daughter's shoulders hunch slightly. Getting there. As if she were a project. A problem to be solved. Dinner preparation revealed more fractures in the facade. Jacqueline moved around the kitchen with the efficiency of someone who'd choreographed every motion, but her hands trembled when she reached for the wine bottle. Brent took it from her. "Let me handle this. You know you always pour too much." He filled 3 glasses, his noticeably fuller than ours. "Besides, after that presentation disaster at work, you need something to take the edge off." "It wasn't a disaster," she said quietly, stirring something on the stove. "Only because I made some calls." He took a long drink. "My contacts saved your reputation." We sat down to dinner around 7. The food was excellent. Pan-seared salmon, roasted vegetables, wild rice pilaf. Jacqueline had always been a talented cook, but I could barely taste it. I was too busy watching how she cut her food into tiny pieces but hardly ate, watching how she refilled Brent's wine glass without being asked, watching how her eyes darted to his face before she answered any of my questions, as if seeking permission. By his 4th glass, Brent's charm had started to fray at the edges. His words came louder, his gestures broader. He leaned back in his chair and pointed his fork at me. "You know, Luther, your daughter would still be stuck in an entry-level job if I hadn't introduced her to the right people." He laughed, not kindly. "She doesn't have the killer instinct for corporate success, too soft. But I saw potential, and I made her career possible." I set down my fork slowly. 30 years as a federal judge had taught me to control my reactions, to keep my face neutral even when fury boiled beneath the surface. "Jacqueline earned her MBA from UC Berkeley," I said, my voice measured. "Her success is her own. Degrees don't mean much without the right people vouching for you." He waved his hand dismissively. "Trust me on this one." Jacqueline had gone pale. Her hands shook as she stood and began clearing plates, even though I hadn't finished eating. "Anyone want coffee? I made a chocolate tart for dessert." Always trying to change the subject. Brent shook his head, reaching for the wine bottle again. "Can't handle honest conversation." I watched a tear slide down her cheek before she turned toward the kitchen. She brushed it away quickly, but I'd seen it. And in that moment, I saw everything. The pattern of humiliation, the systematic erosion of her confidence, the way she'd been trained to apologize for existing. "I think I'll turn in early," I announced, standing. "Long drive. I'm more tired than I realized." "Lightweight." Brent grinned at me, his words slightly slurred now. "Jacqueline, show your father to the guest room." She walked me upstairs in silence. At the door, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, I'm sorry about tonight. Brent's just stressed about work. He doesn't mean... You don't need to apologize for him." I touched her arm gently. "I'm not... I just..." She hugged herself. "He's been good to me. This house, everything. I owe him. This house was my gift to you." I made sure she heard every word. "You owe him nothing." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for just a second something desperate flickered in her eyes. Then she blinked, smiled that empty smile again, and kissed my cheek. "Good night, Dad. I'm glad you're here." I lay in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. Around 10 o'clock, I heard Brent's voice rise downstairs. Angry, accusatory. I heard Jacqueline's murmured responses, apologetic and pleading, then silence. My judicial mind cataloged evidence: controlling behavior, public humiliation, excessive alcohol consumption, my daughter's fear, her weight loss, her defensive explanations. I'd spent 30 years recognizing predators in my courtroom. I knew manipulation when I saw it, and tomorrow I would talk to my daughter alone. I made coffee at 6 in the morning. The house stayed quiet, Brent sleeping off his hangover, presumably. I sat at the kitchen island, waiting, planning my approach the way I used to prepare for complex trials. Evidence, strategy, the right questions asked the right way. Jacqueline appeared around 7:30, wearing long sleeves despite the June heat already building outside. The morning light was harsh, unforgiving. It highlighted every exhausted line in her face, the tension in her shoulders. "You're up early." She poured herself coffee, kept her back to me. "Old habit. Listen, I thought we could have lunch today, just the two of us." I kept my tone casual. "There's that place downtown you used to love, the one with the patio overlooking the water." Her hand froze on the coffee mug. She glanced toward the stairs. Yes, that sounds nice." Her phone buzzed on the counter. She grabbed it, read the message, and her face went white. "Actually, Brent mentioned he had plans for us today. I forgot. Maybe another time before you leave?" "Jacqueline." I stood, moved closer. "I drove 6 hours to see you. I'm asking for 60 minutes. She stared at the phone screen, then at me, then back at the phone. I could see the war happening behind her eyes, fear battling against something else. Hope, maybe. Or desperation. "Okay," she whispered, "but I can't be long." An hour later, she called to cancel. Her voice sounded thin, stretched tight. "Dad, I'm sorry. Brent really wants to spend time together since you're visiting. It's important to him that we..." "I'm your father." I kept my voice firm, but not angry. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking." Silence stretched between us. Then, "The coffee shop on Prospect Street, noon." I checked out of the guest room, drove to a hotel, and called her back. "I'll be there." She arrived 23 minutes late. I'd been watching the door, and when she walked in, I noticed immediately that she'd changed clothes, probably more than once, judging by the wrinkles in her blouse and the way her jewelry didn't quite match her outfit. She'd been anxious, indecisive, afraid of making the wrong choice. She chose a seat with her back to the wall, positioned so she could see the entrance. Hypervigilance. I'd seen it in witnesses testifying against violent offenders. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic." She set her phone face up on the table between us, kept glancing at it. "No problem. What do you want to drink?" "Just coffee, black." I ordered for both of us. When the drinks arrived, I started with easy questions. Her work, her health, general topics that wouldn't spook her. She answered in short bursts, her fingers wrapped tight around the coffee cup. "How are things at home?" I asked finally. "Really?" "Fine." Too quick. "Everything's fine." "You seem tired." "I'm just busy with work." Her voice brightened artificially. "Brent's been amazing, really supportive. He's helped me so much with my career. You can talk to me about anything. You know that, right?" "There's nothing to talk about." Her voice rose slightly. Several people at nearby tables glanced over. She lowered it again, leaned forward. "My marriage is fine. Better than fine. Brent loves me. He takes care of me. I don't know what you think you saw last night, but I think I saw a man who drinks too much and belittles his wife in front of her father. He was stressed. You don't understand how demanding his job is." She was breathing faster now, defensive and desperate. "I'm lucky he puts up with my anxiety and my overthinking and all my..." She reached for her coffee. Her sleeve caught on her watch, slid up her forearm. The bruise was unmistakable, yellow-green at the edges, darker purple in the center, at least a week old. And the pattern was clear, 4 finger marks and a thumbprint. Someone had grabbed her wrist hard enough to leave that kind of mark. Someone with large hands. I didn't react. 30 years on the bench had taught me control. I simply noted the evidence. Location, color, pattern, restraint injury, not accidental. Jacqueline saw me looking. She yanked her sleeve down with such force that coffee sloshed out of her cup. I have to go. Jacqueline, I'm clumsy. I bumped it on something. I don't remember. She stood, grabbed her purse, wouldn't meet my eyes. I need to go shopping for dinner. What happened to your wrist? I kept my voice quiet, steady. Nothing happened. She was backing toward the door now. Please don't, I have to go. I'll call you later. Jacqueline? I stood too, but didn't approach. Didn't want to crowd her, make her more afraid. I'm staying in San Diego. I'm not leaving you. She stopped at the door, turned back. For 5 seconds, I counted them, the mask dropped completely. I saw terror and shame and something that might have been relief all mixed together in her expression. Then she blinked, and it was gone. I have to go, she whispered and fled. I stood in that coffee shop for a long time after her car disappeared from the parking lot. Then I picked up my phone and searched for hotels near La Jolla. Found one 10 minutes from her house, close enough to respond if she needed me, far enough away that Brent wouldn't know I was watching. That night, I lay awake in an unfamiliar bed, my phone on the nightstand beside me. The digital clock read midnight, then 1, then 2. I didn't sleep. I waited, knowing somehow that the call would come. The phone's vibration pulled me from the edge of sleep. Not really sleep, just that shallow drift where you're aware of every sound, every shift in the darkness. I'd been lying there fully clothed, my hand near the nightstand, waiting for something I couldn't name but knew was coming. The screen glowed. Jacqueline Mobile, 3:17 in the morning. Jacqueline. I sat up, already reaching for my shoes. Dad, Daddy, I need you. Her voice broke around the words. She hadn't called me that since she was 12 years old. I'm at the police station on Broadway. Brent hit me tonight. My hand steadied on the phone even as my heart kicked into overdrive. Tell me what happened. Are you hurt? I told him I wanted to stay with you for a few days. Just some space to think. He'd been drinking since dinner, and when I mentioned leaving, even temporarily, he lost it. She was crying now, trying to talk through it. He grabbed my face, shoved me into the wall, split my lip. But Dad, he's telling them I attacked him first, that I scratched his face when he was just defending himself. And Detective Henry keeps asking me why I provoked him, what I did to make him so angry. I could hear male voices in the background, official tones edged with skepticism. I don't have a lawyer. I don't know what to do. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They're talking about charges against me. Against me. Something crystallized in my chest. Not panic, but cold purpose. The same clarity I used to feel in my courtroom when a witness started lying, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I would dismantle their story piece by methodical piece. Jacqueline, listen to me carefully. I switched on the bedside lamp, already moving. Do not sign anything. Do not answer any more questions. Tell them you're invoking your right to remain silent until your attorney arrives. Okay? A whimper. Okay? Are they treating you as a suspect or a victim? I don't know. Both. They separated us, but they keep asking what I did to set him off. Like, it's my fault he... Her voice broke again. Don't answer anything else. I was pulling on the pants I'd laid across the chair, the shirt I'd left within reach. Some part of me had known, had prepared. Use these exact words. I'm exercising my right to silence until my attorney arrives. Can you do that? Yes. I'm leaving now. 15 minutes. I grabbed my wallet, my keys, my phone charger, muscle memory from 3 decades of emergency court sessions. What if they charge me? Her voice was so small. What if they don't believe me? They will believe you. I promise you that. I walked quickly toward the elevator, phone pressed to my ear. You're not alone anymore. Never again. I'm scared. I know. I softened my voice just for a moment. But you're going to be fine. I'm coming. I ended the call as I reached my car. The parking garage was empty, fluorescent lights humming overhead. I started the engine and pulled out onto the street, the city stretching dark and quiet around me. No traffic at this hour. I took Pacific Coast Highway toward downtown, pushing 10 miles over the limit, my hands steady on the wheel even as my mind raced. 30 years on the federal bench. I knew every legal maneuver, every procedural protection, every way the system could fail a victim who didn't know how to navigate it. I'd sentenced men like Brent Boyd before, the ones who wore suits and smiled in court, who had explanations that sounded reasonable until you looked closer and saw the pattern beneath. The city lights blurred past. Hotels, restaurants, closed storefronts. San Diego at 3 a.m. belonged to shift workers and insomniacs, and people running from something or toward something. I was running toward my daughter. The police station rose ahead, a concrete block of institutional authority, lit up like a ship in the darkness. I pulled into the parking lot, found a space near the entrance, turned off the engine, sat for just a moment. Through the glass doors, I could see the reception area. A desk officer hunched over a computer, the fluorescent lighting that made everything look harsh and official. The machinery of justice that had somehow already failed Jacqueline before I'd even arrived. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. The man looking back wasn't a worried father. He was Judge Luther Crawford, federal bench, 30 years of authority in every line of his face. I got out of the car and walked toward those doors. They had no idea what was coming. The automatic doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Cold air hit me first, then the smell, industrial cleaner and stale coffee, and the particular staleness of a building that never sleeps. The reception area stretched before me, all beige walls and scuffed linoleum. A single officer behind the desk, staring at his computer screen, with the glazed expression of someone 6 hours into a night shift. I walked toward him, my footsteps echoing in the quiet, measured, deliberate. He barely glanced up. "Yeah, how can I help you?" His name tag read Curtis, young, maybe 30. Probably been on the force 5 years, still working night shifts, still paying dues. "Luther Crawford." I stopped at the counter, met his distracted gaze. "I'm here regarding the detention of Jacqueline Boyd." "Okay." He started typing, fingers moving across the keyboard with the muscle memory of someone who'd processed 1,000 names. "And your relationship to the detain." His fingers froze. The transformation happened in stages. First his hands went still above the keyboard, then his eyes widened slightly. Then his head snapped up, really looking at me for the first time, and color drained from his face like water from a broken dam. "Crawford?" His voice came out uncertain. "Luther? Judge Crawford?" I simply nodded, maintained eye contact, waited. "Federal Judge Crawford?" He stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward and hitting the wall behind him. "Sir, I apologize. I didn't realize. Your daughter, you said Boyd? Jacqueline Boyd is your—" He trailed off, reaching for the phone with hands that had started shaking. I stood perfectly still. Didn't need to say anything else. 30 years of authority did the work for me. Every case I'd presided over, every officer who'd testified in my courtroom, every decision that had sent criminals to federal prison. The reputation preceded me, surrounded me, changed the atmosphere of this building simply by my presence in it. Curtis pressed numbers with trembling fingers, his professional composure completely shattered. "Detective Henry, you need to come to reception immediately." His voice climbed in pitch. "We have— Judge Crawford is here. Yes, that one, about the Boyd case." I heard the response through the phone, sharp, urgent questions. Curtis kept glancing at me as he answered, as if I might disappear if he looked away. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." He hung up and tried to smile. It came out more like a grimace. "Detective Henry will be right out. Can I get you anything? Coffee?" "No." One word. That's all it took. Curtis nodded quickly, sat back down, then stood up again, uncertain what to do with himself. Other officers in the room had started paying attention now. I could feel their eyes, hear the whispered conversations starting. "Sir, I want you to know we take all domestic violence cases seriously." Curtis was babbling now, trying to recover some professional ground. "We follow protocol, conduct thorough investigations." "Then why is my daughter being treated as a suspect when she called you for help?" The question hung in the air between us. Curtis opened his mouth, closed it, looked desperately toward the corridor where Detective Henry would presumably appear. Right on cue, footsteps. A man in his early 40s, salt and pepper hair, tired suit, the careful expression of someone who'd just been woken with very bad news. He approached with his hand extended, his professional mask firmly in place despite whatever panic might be churning underneath. Judge Crawford. He shook my hand firmly. I'm Detective Craig Henry. I had the honor of testifying in your court 3 years ago, the Mendoza trafficking case. I studied his face. Remembered him, actually. Solid testimony. Good preparation. I remember. You were thorough. He relaxed slightly. Tell me, Detective, were you thorough tonight? The relaxation vanished. He understood the weight in that question, the implication behind the words. Sir, if you'll come with me, we can discuss the situation. He gestured toward the corridor. My daughter was the one who called police for help. I didn't move yet. Let him wait. Yet somehow, she's being treated as a suspect. I'd very much like to understand how that happened. There were conflicting statements. Henry chose his words carefully. Her husband has visible injuries as well. Defensive scratches on his face and neck. When we have mutual combat situations, my daughter weighs 120 pounds. She has a split lip and bruising on her face. I kept my voice level, judicial. And you're suggesting mutual combat? Henry's jaw tightened. Sir, with respect, I interviewed both parties. Mr. Boyd was cooperative, calm, willing to answer questions. Your daughter was emotional, inconsistent in her timeline. In your experience, abusers are often charming and cooperative while their victims are traumatized and struggling to articulate what happened to them. I stepped closer, not threatening. I didn't need to threaten. Detective, you testified before me. You know how I feel about sloppy police work. The color in his face shifted. Judge Crawford, I assure you, where is my daughter now? Interview room 3. But, sir, she's invoked her right to silence, so we're not questioning her further at this time. Good. She was following my instructions? I gestured toward the corridor. Shall we? We walked together past the reception desk, past Curtis, who was still stammering apologies to no one in particular, past officers who straightened at their desks when they saw me. I could feel the station's atmosphere changing, the ripple effect of recognition, of sudden institutional anxiety. Detective Henry's professional courtesy now had a sharp edge of nervousness. His stride was slightly too fast, his shoulders slightly too tense. He understood what I understood. This wasn't about a domestic dispute anymore. This was about institutional credibility, about whether his department had failed to protect a victim because her abuser was a better liar, about whether he'd let himself be manipulated because the victim was too traumatized to perform composure correctly. And I was about to make sure everyone knew the answer. Detective Henry led me deeper into the station, past rows of empty desks and flickering computer screens. The corridor stretched ahead, institutional beige broken only by numbered doors. He was talking, explaining procedures, justifying decisions. But I wasn't listening to the words. I was reading the subtext, the nervous edge in his voice. She's in interview 3, he said, reaching for the door handle. Like I mentioned, she invoked her right to silence about 20 minutes ago, so we haven't... He opened the door. Jacqueline sat in a metal chair under fluorescent lights that made her injuries look worse, more vivid. Scratches ran down the left side of her face. Her bottom lip was split and swollen. A bruise was forming on her cheekbone, purple spreading beneath the skin like spilled ink. She held a paper cup of water in both hands. Hadn't drunk from it, just held it. When she saw me, her face crumpled. Dad. I moved to her side, keeping my movements controlled. Not rushing, she needed strength, not panic. I crouched beside her chair, tilting her face gently toward the light. She flinched, not from me, but from habit. I examined the injuries with clinical detachment, the same way I'd reviewed photographic evidence in assault cases. Fresh. Within the last few hours, defensive scratches mixed with offensive strikes. I took her hand. It was ice cold. Then I stood and turned to Detective Henry, who hovered in the doorway like he wanted to be anywhere else. Detective, my voice came out level, judicial. Was my daughter offered medical attention? We were going to arrange that after the interviews were complete, so no medical attention was provided. I let the statement hang. Were photographs taken of these injuries for evidence? Henry shifted his weight. We were planning to do that once we determined. That's a no. I moved closer, not threatening, didn't need to threaten. Was Mr. Boyd administered a breathalyzer or blood alcohol test? He didn't appear intoxicated. That's not what I asked, Detective. Was he tested? A pause. No, sir. Were there any witnesses to the altercation? The neighbors didn't report hearing anything. Did you canvass the neighbors, or are you assuming they would have called if they'd heard something? His jaw tightened. We haven't completed that canvass yet. I let the silence stretch. Behind me, I could hear Jacqueline's shaky breathing. In my peripheral vision, I saw Officer Curtis watching from the hallway, his face pale. Walk me through your assessment, I said finally. My daughter calls 911, reports domestic violence, has visible injuries requiring medical attention. What was your investigative priority? Judge Crawford, with respect, Henry tried to salvage something. When we arrived, both parties had injuries. Mr. Boyd had scratches on his face and neck. Your daughter was emotional, inconsistent in her timeline. He was calm, cooperative, willing to provide a detailed statement. In situations with conflicting accounts, Detective Henry, I kept my voice soft, deadly soft. I've presided over domestic violence cases for 30 years. Do you know what the pattern looks like? The abuser is always calm, always cooperative, always has a story that sounds reasonable. The victim is always emotional, always struggling to articulate trauma while it's still happening to them. He opened his mouth, closed it. My daughter weighs 120 pounds, I continued. She has a split lip, facial bruising, and defensive wounds. Your suspect has minor scratches that could easily be self-inflicted or the result of her attempting to protect herself. And your response was to treat them as equivalent? We have to follow protocol in mutual combat situations. This isn't mutual combat. This is a failure of assessment. I glanced at Jacqueline, then back to Henry. Let me be very clear. My daughter called for help. Your department's response was to treat her as a potential suspect rather than a victim. That failure in protocol concerns me deeply. Judge Crawford, I understand your frustration. I'm not frustrated, Detective. I let the words cut. I'm evaluating. I need you to understand something. I've reviewed thousands of cases. I know what proper procedure looks like. I also know Chief Williams personally, and District Attorney Morrison. We've worked together for 15 years. The threat landed. Henry's face shifted. I'm taking my daughter for proper medical documentation of her injuries at an emergency room of our choosing, I said. Mr. Boyd will remain in custody until a thorough investigation is completed, including photographs, medical evaluation, blood alcohol testing, and witness canvassing. If he's released before those steps are taken, Chief Williams will hear from me directly. Are we clear? Yes, sir. Henry's voice came out quiet. We're clear. Good. I helped Jacqueline to her feet, my hand steady on her elbow. You have my number. When you've completed a proper investigation, you can reach me. I guided her toward the door. Henry stepped aside, not meeting my eyes. We walked past Officer Curtis, who stammered something about hoping everything worked out. Past the other officers who'd gathered to watch, their faces carefully neutral. Through the reception area, through the glass doors. The parking lot air was cool and clean after the stale fluorescence inside. Jacqueline leaned against my car, shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. I took off my jacket and draped it over her shoulders. We're going to the hotel, I said. You're going to tell me everything, and then we're going to fix this. She nodded, too exhausted to speak. As I drove through the empty streets, she stared out the window at the sleeping city. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east, that deep blue before dawn, and I could feel her beginning to understand that this nightmare might actually end. The hotel room door clicked shut behind us with a sound like a lock engaging. Jacqueline made it 3 steps inside before her legs gave out. She sank onto the edge of the bed and started crying, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. I didn't rush to comfort her. She needed to release this. Had probably been holding it in for months, maybe years. Instead, I moved to the small coffee maker on the dresser, filled it with water from the bathroom tap, tore open 2 packets of grounds. The machine gurgled to life, ordinary and mechanical, while my daughter fell apart behind me. I poured 2 cups when it finished, set one in front of her on the nightstand, sat down in the chair across from the bed, and waited. The crying eventually subsided into shaky breaths. She wiped her face with her sleeve, took a sip of coffee, winced when it touched her split lip. "I need you to tell me everything," I said quietly. "Not the summary version, not the version that protects him. Everything." She stared into the coffee cup. "Where do I start?" "The beginning. When did things change?" "It was gradual." Her voice came out rough. 6 months after the wedding, maybe? He started commenting on my clothes, said certain outfits made me look heavy or cheap, or like I was trying too hard. I thought he was helping me improve. I sipped my coffee, waited. Then it was my friends. He'd be polite to them, but afterward he'd point out things they'd said or done that were disrespectful to him, to us. He made them feel uncomfortable enough that they stopped coming around. Said I was lucky to have a husband who cared enough to protect me from toxic people. The sky outside the window was brightening, not quite dawn yet, but close. "He took over our finances," she continued. "Joint account," he said, "easier to manage." But then I had to ask permission for everything. Coffee with a coworker, check with Brent first. New work clothes, submit receipts. He made me feel like I was bad with money, irresponsible, like I needed supervision. My hands tightened on the coffee cup. The first time he got physical. She paused, gathering courage. "We were arguing about my mother's birthday. I wanted to fly to Atlanta to see her. He said we couldn't afford it. I said I'd use my own money, which I still thought I had access to. He grabbed my arm, hard enough to bruise. I wore long sleeves for a week. How many times has he hurt you physically?" The question hung in the air between us. Tonight was the 4th time. She wouldn't look at me. But it's been getting worse. The first 3 times, he cried afterward. Said he'd never forgive himself. Bought me flowers, jewelry. Promised it would never happen again. And I believed him. Because the things he says, he's convinced me I'm worthless without him. That no one else would put up with my anxiety, my overthinking, my constant mistakes. Dawn light filtered through the curtains now, soft and gray. "He tells people he worked overtime for years to afford the house," she said. "That he gave me this life, but you gave us that house as a wedding gift, Dad. I tried to remind him once, and he said the gift was symbolic, that his hard work made us worthy of receiving it. I started to believe him. Something cold and sharp settled in my chest. 'That house is yours,' I said. 'The deed is in your name alone. I made sure of that before the wedding.' She looked at me then, really looked at me. 'What?' 'Premarital gift, specifically designated to you. He has no legal claim to it whatsoever.' Her face crumpled again. 'He's been lying about that for years. About everything, I suspect.' I set down my coffee cup. 'What happened tonight? Walk me through it.' I told him I wanted to stay with you for a few days. Just some space to think. He'd been drinking since dinner, whiskey, not wine. When I said I was leaving, he lost it. Said I was abandoning him, throwing away our marriage, being selfish and ungrateful. I tried to go upstairs to pack a bag, and he grabbed my face, shoved me into the wall. That's when my lip split. And the scratches on his face? I tried to push him away. He grabbed my wrists and I panicked. I think I scratched him then, trying to get free. He let go and stepped back, and I ran for my phone and called the police. She wrapped her arms around herself. When they came, he was so calm, so reasonable. Told them I'd attacked him out of nowhere, that I'd been acting erratic for weeks, that he was worried about my mental health. And they believed him, Dad. They believed him over me. What am I going to do? Her voice broke. If you hadn't come, listen to me. I leaned forward, held her gaze. By the end of today, you will have legal protection. Brent will be out of that house. The system failed you tonight, but I won't let it fail you again. How? She sounded so small, so hopeless. I've been a federal judge for 30 years. I know every prosecutor, every family court judge, every police captain in this county, and they know me. I let that sink in. I know which family court judge takes emergency protective orders seriously. I know which prosecutor in the DA's office specializes in domestic violence and has a personal investment in getting convictions. I know real estate law regarding premarital gifts and how to expedite property hearings. You can do all that? I can, and I will. I stood, moved to the window. The sun was touching the horizon now, turning the sky pink and gold. The court's open in 4 hours. That gives me time to make calls, arrange things. You need to sleep. I can't sleep. Try anyway. I pulled the blanket from the bed, draped it over her shoulders. I'll be right here. She curled up in the chair, still wearing my jacket, wrapped in the blanket. Within minutes, exhaustion pulled her under. I watched the sunrise while she slept, watched the city wake up, cars appearing on the streets, lights coming on in buildings, the ordinary morning routine of people whose lives weren't falling apart. I thought about timing, leverage, the difference between legal and just. Brent Boyd thought he'd won last night. He'd manipulated the police, played the victim perfectly, sent his wife home traumatized and doubting herself. He had no idea he'd already lost. Morning light filled the hotel room. Traffic sounds rose from the street below, the city waking up, beginning its ordinary Thursday. I'd been awake for hours, watching the sky change colors, making lists. Jacqueline stirred in the chair, confused for a moment. Then she remembered where she was, why she was here. Her hand went to her split lip. "Coffee's ready." I handed her a fresh cup. "We start now." She took it with both hands, still wrapped in the blanket. "Start what?" "Building your case." I showed her my notepad. Names, numbers, times, action items. 30 years of legal practice condensed into a morning's battle plan. First call goes out at 8. By this afternoon, you'll have legal protection. By tomorrow, Brent will be out of your house. How can you watch? At 8 o'clock exactly, I dialed a number I'd known for 15 years. Judge Morrison's chambers. Her clerk's voice, crisp and professional. "This is Luther Crawford. I need to speak with Patricia." Judge Crawford. The formality softened. "Judge Morrison is reviewing briefs. Can I schedule a call?" "It's urgent. Family matter." A pause. 1 moment. 30 seconds later. "Luther?" Patricia Morrison's voice carried concern. "What's wrong?" "My daughter, domestic violence, physical injuries documented. Police mishandled the initial response last night." "How bad?" "Bad enough for an emergency protective order. I need a hearing today." Silence while she processed. Then, 2 o'clock, my courtroom. "I'll clear the calendar now." "Thank you, Patricia. Don't thank me yet. Just bring solid evidence." I hung up and dialed the next number. Michelle Torres, family law specialist I'd known since she clerked at the federal courthouse 10 years ago. "Luther Crawford," her surprise was evident. "It's been years. I need to hire you, my daughter. Protective order hearing at 2 this afternoon with Judge Morrison. Can you take it?" "Today? She caught herself. "Send me everything you have. I'll make it work." I emailed her photos of Jacqueline's injuries taken on my phone last night, the police report number, a 3-paragraph summary. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. "I'm in," Torres said. "Where's your daughter now?" "With me. We're getting proper medical documentation in an hour." "Good. I'll draft the petition and file it by noon. See you at 1 for prep." By 9:30, we were at the hospital. A victim advocate met us at the emergency room entrance. I'd called ahead, used connections, made sure someone would be waiting. The nurse who did the intake exam was thorough and kind. She photographed everything: the split lip, the scratches on Jacqueline's face, the bruising on her arms that I hadn't seen before. Then she examined Jacqueline's torso and found more bruising on her ribs. "When did this happen?" the nurse asked. Jacqueline's voice came out small. 3 weeks ago, maybe? I don't remember. I thought it was gone." The nurse took more photos, time-stamped, signed, documented. At one point, Jacqueline started crying. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears sliding down her face while a stranger cataloged the evidence of her husband's violence. I handed her tissues, waited. "Can you tell me about the other times?" the nurse asked gently. Jacqueline looked at me. I nodded. "The first time was 18 months ago. By 11, we were back at the police station. Detective Henry met us in the lobby, and his entire demeanor had changed from the middle of the night. Professional, respectful, careful. Ms. Boyd?" He shook Jacqueline's hand. "I want to apologize for last night. We should have handled things differently." "You're handling them correctly now," I said. "That's what matters." He led us to an interview room, different from the one where I'd found her at 3 in the morning. This one had a camera, recording equipment, proper documentation protocols. "For the record," Henry began, "describe the pattern of behavior leading up to last night's assault." Jacqueline took a breath, started talking. She told him about the isolation, the financial control, the monitoring of her phone and email, the systematic erosion of her independence disguised as love. And the physical violence? Henry prompted. 4 incidents total. Last night was the worst. I sat where she could see me, providing silent support while she spoke. Occasionally I interjected, clarifying legal points, ensuring something was documented properly for both the protective order and the criminal prosecution. Henry took notes, asked good questions, built a solid record. When we finished, he looked at me. The DA's office is reviewing the case now. Given the documented pattern and the medical evidence, they're filing battery charges. When? This afternoon, before your hearing with Judge Morrison. I nodded. The pieces were falling into place. At 1 o'clock, we met Michelle Torres at her office downtown. She'd been busy. The protective order petition sat on her desk, professionally formatted, all the morning's evidence attached as exhibits. The medical documentation is excellent, she said, flipping through pages. The police report supports everything. The DA filing criminal charges adds weight. What about the house? I asked. That's the interesting part. Torres pulled up a property record on her computer. You said it was a wedding gift? Premarital, deed in Jacqueline's name only. Torres smiled. That simplifies things considerably. Under California law, that's her separate property. He has no claim to it. We'll request he be barred from the residence immediately. Jacqueline was staring at the petition, reading it, her entire marriage summarized in legal language, sanitized and clinical. How do you feel? I asked her. She looked up. Like maybe I can breathe again. Torres's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned. Emergency motion just filed. Brent's attorney, his father, apparently, requesting postponement of the hearing, claims insufficient time to prepare. Morrison won't grant it, I said. Response just came through. Torres looked up. Motion denied. She cited imminent threat to petitioner's safety. Hearing proceeds as scheduled. He's panicking, I said. Good. Then Jacqueline's phone rang on the desk between us. She looked at the screen and went pale. It's Brent. I saw her hands start to shake. Watched that old fear response kick in. He'd been released on bail. Of course he had. Minor charges, no priors. They'd set bail and let him walk. He didn't know yet what was waiting for him at 2 o'clock. But he knew something had shifted. The phone kept ringing. Torres looked at me. Silent question. I nodded. Answer it, I said. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what he has to say. Jacqueline's finger hovered over the answer button. Her hand trembled. I reached across the desk, covered her hand with mine. Steady, grounding. You're not alone, I said quietly. Answer it. She tapped the speaker icon. Brent's voice filled the office, broken and desperate. Jackie, baby, please. He was crying, or performing crying. The sound was perfect, convincing. I'm so sorry. I was drunk and stupid and I hate myself. Please just talk to me. Please. Jacqueline opened her mouth, closed it. I love you so much. His voice cracked beautifully. I can't believe what I did. I'm nothing without you. I'll do anything. Quit drinking, go to therapy. Whatever you want. Just please, baby, don't leave me. I watched my daughter's face, saw the conditioning kick in, the automatic response to his distress. 2 years of training don't disappear overnight. Torres sat perfectly still, listening, recording on her phone. Jackie? Brent's voice rose with manufactured panic. Are you there? Please say something. I can't. If you leave me, I don't know what I'll do. I can't live without you. I mean it. I'll end it all. Jacqueline's grip on the desk edge tightened, knuckles white. Her face was softening. I reached across and took the phone from her hand. Mr. Boyd. My voice cut through his performance like a blade. This is Luther Crawford. Silence. Then his breathing changed. You will have no further contact with my daughter, I continued. All communication goes through her attorney from now on. The transformation was instantaneous. The sobbing cut off mid-syllable, replaced by something cold and hard. You have no right! His voice rose, anger flooding in where desperation had been. That's my wife! You can't just... I can. I did. We're done here. That house is mine! He was shouting now, the mask completely dropped. I've been paying the mortgage for 5 years. My father is an attorney, and we will bury you both in court. Jacqueline, if you listen to him, you'll regret... I ended the call, set the phone down gently on Torres's desk. I assume you recorded that? Torres held up her phone. One-party consent state. That recording just became evidence of harassment and threats. I turned to Jacqueline. She was staring at her phone like she'd never seen it before. That's what manipulation sounds like from the outside, I said. When you're in it, it feels like love. Now you know the difference. He switched so fast. Her voice was barely a whisper. The crying just stopped. Because it wasn't real. None of it was real. Torres leaned forward. The suicide threats, the promises to change, those are textbook control tactics. If he were genuinely suicidal, he wouldn't have switched to rage when he didn't get the response he wanted. He's done this before, Jacqueline said slowly. Every time we fight, and I always believed him. Not anymore. I stood, checked my watch. 1:15. We should go over what happens in court. Torres pulled out her notes, started explaining the hearing process, how Judge Morrison would hear testimony, what questions might be asked, how to respond to cross-examination. 15 minutes in, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, made a small sound of satisfaction. Criminal charges just filed, battery with enhancement for pattern of abuse. That was fast, Jacqueline said. Your father has friends in the DA's office, Torres said with a slight smile. They know which cases deserve priority. My phone buzzed next. Text from Judge Morrison's clerk. Motion denied. Hearing proceeds 2 p.m. Judge reviewed evidence. She's not happy. I showed it to Torres. Morrison doesn't like abusers, she said, especially ones who try to manipulate her court schedule. We spent the next 20 minutes reviewing strategy. Torres was thorough, professional, and smart. She knew family law cold, had handled hundreds of protective order cases. But this one mattered more because I was watching, because Jacqueline was my daughter, because failure wasn't an option. At 1:45, Torres gathered her files. We should head over. Courthouse is just a few blocks. Jacqueline stood, smoothed her shirt. She'd changed at the hotel into something professional, trying to look put together for the judge despite the visible injuries. Wait. I moved to the window, looked down at the street below. Brent's car was pulling into a parking space across from the courthouse, a metallic gray sedan I recognized from my visit to the house. He got out, adjusted his tie, took a deep breath, preparing his courtroom face. I watched him check his reflection in the car window, smooth his hair, the same meticulous grooming he'd displayed at dinner 3 nights ago. He thought he could charm Judge Morrison the way he'd charmed Detective Henry in the middle of the night. He thought his tears and his lawyer father would be enough. He had no idea what he was walking into. Luther? Torres's voice behind me. I turned from the window. It's time, she said. I looked at Jacqueline. She was pale but steady, scared but determined. Yes, I said. It is. We gathered our documents, our evidence, our carefully constructed case, the medical photos, the police report, the recorded phone call, the criminal complaint, the property records proving the house was Jacqueline's alone. Torres led us out of her office, into the elevator, through the lobby. The courthouse was 4 blocks away, an easy walk in the June heat. As we crossed the street, I saw Brent ahead of us, walking up the courthouse steps. He turned, saw us, and froze. Our eyes met across the distance. He saw Jacqueline walking beside her attorney, saw me behind her, close and protective, saw the professional leather folders, the documentation, the preparation. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. Then he turned and walked inside. He knows, Jacqueline whispered. He suspects, I corrected. He doesn't know the half of it yet. We climbed the courthouse steps together, through security, up the elevator to the 3rd floor, where Judge Patricia Morrison's courtroom waited. Brent stood in the hallway with an older man who looked like him, same build, same coloring, his father, the attorney. They were talking urgently, the father glancing at papers while Brent gestured with sharp, angry movements. When we appeared, the conversation stopped. Morrison's courtroom doors stood ahead. 10 minutes until 2 o'clock. The final pieces were in place. The courtroom doors opened with a whisper. Judge Patricia Morrison was already at the bench, reading through documents, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up when we entered, and our eyes met across the room. 2 people who'd spent decades in the justice system, who understood what happened when it worked and what happened when it failed. She nodded once. professional acknowledgement. We took our seats. Torres at the petitioner's table with Jacqueline beside her, me in the front row of the gallery. This was their case professionally, even if everyone in the room knew whose strategy had built it. Across the aisle, Brent sat with his father. When he saw Jacqueline, his face transformed, wounded, hopeful, apologetic. The performance was flawless. But I saw the anger underneath, saw the way his hands gripped the table edge. Morrison's gavel came down. We're here for an emergency petition for protective order in the matter of Boyd versus Boyd. Counsel, please proceed. Torres stood. Your Honor, Michelle Torres representing the petitioner, Jacqueline Boyd, will be presenting evidence of a sustained pattern of abuse, psychological, financial, and physical, culminating in the assault that occurred last night. She called Jacqueline to the witness stand. I watched my daughter raise her right hand, swear to tell the truth, take her seat. She looked small in that chair, but her voice came out steady. Ms. Boyd, Torres began gently, please describe for the court the incident that occurred last night. I told my husband I wanted to spend a few days with my father. Jacqueline's hands twisted in her lap, but her voice held. He'd been drinking. He said I was abandoning him, that I was ungrateful after everything he'd done for me. When I started packing a bag, he grabbed my arm and hit me. Was this the first time he'd been physically violent? No, the fourth time in 2 years. Torres walked her through it. The isolation from friends, the financial control despite Jacqueline's own income, the constant criticism disguised as concern, the way he'd convinced her she was worthless without him. Then Torres turned on the courtroom monitor. The medical photographs appeared. Jacqueline's split lip, the bruises on her ribs, the fingerprint marks on her arms, 4 fingers and a thumb, clear as evidence could be. I heard someone in the gallery inhale sharply, saw Brent's father close his eyes briefly. These photographs were taken this morning at Scripps Memorial Hospital, Torres said. I'm submitting the complete medical report as Exhibit B. She presented the police report next, Detective Henry's formal statement, taken that morning, documenting not just last night, but the entire pattern. Then she played the recording. Brent's voice filled the courtroom, syrupy apologies melting into vicious threats within seconds. The transformation was so stark, so undeniable, that Morrison leaned forward, her expression hardening. When it ended, she looked at Brent. Mr. Boyd, is that your voice on the recording? His attorney stood. Your Honor, my client was emotional and distraught. Counselor? Morrison's voice could cut steel. I've been on the bench for 20 years. I know the difference between distress and intimidation. That recording demonstrates a clear pattern of manipulation and threats. She made a note. Brent's attorney sat down. He tried again during cross-examination. Ms. Boyd, isn't it true that you've had arguments with your husband before? That sometimes you've said things that might be considered provocative? Counselor. Morrison didn't wait for Torres to object. This court does not entertain arguments that blame victims for their abuse. Do you have any evidence that contradicts the medical documentation, police reports, and recorded threats we've heard today? No, Your Honor, but then let's move to the question of housing. Torres stood. Your Honor, the respondent has suggested he has equal right to the residence. I'd like to present the deed. She handed it to the clerk. Morrison reviewed it, and I saw understanding cross her face. The property was titled solely in Ms. Boyd's name 5 years ago, before the marriage. She looked up. Mr. Crawford, I see you're listed as grantor. This was a gift? I stood. Yes, Your Honor. Wedding gift to my daughter. Separate property under California Family Code, Section 7070. Morrison turned to Brent's attorney. Your client will need to find alternative housing. Any objection based in law rather than convenience? No, Your Honor. Morrison pulled her microphone closer. I'm issuing a temporary protective order effective immediately. Mr. Boyd, you are ordered to vacate the residence at... She glanced at the paperwork. A 4247 La Jolla Scenic Drive within 2 hours. You are prohibited from any contact with Ms. Boyd. No phone calls, texts, emails, or third-party communication. You must maintain a minimum distance of 100 yards at all times. She looked directly at Brent. Violation of this order is a criminal offense. The San Diego Police Department will supervise your collection of personal belongings this evening. A hearing on permanent orders and property rights is scheduled for next Thursday. But I'll note for the record that the evidence of separate property ownership appears conclusive. Her gavel came down. This hearing is concluded. I watched Brent's hands form fists on the table, watched his father place a restraining hand on his son's arm. This was the moment. Brent finally understanding that his manipulation had failed, that his control was broken, that the judge saw exactly what he was. The courtroom emptied in stages, Brent and his father through one exit, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. We waited, then left through another door. In the corridor, Torres explained the next steps: permanent hearing procedures, criminal case timeline, property documentation for next week. Jacqueline nodded, processing, and I saw something in her face I hadn't seen in days. Hope. Not the fragile hope of someone wishing for rescue, but the solid hope of someone who'd fought for herself and won. The police will be at the house at 4:30 to supervise his removal, Torres said, checking her watch. Do you want to be there? Jacqueline looked at me, then back at Torres. Yes, she said. I want to watch him leave. We walked out of the courthouse into the late afternoon sun. This is what justice looks like when it works, I thought. The police cruiser pulled up at 4:30 exactly. Brent got out of the back seat, and for a moment, across the driveway, he and Jacqueline made eye contact. I felt her body tense beside me, ready to flee or freeze. Old instincts. Then she straightened her spine, lifted her chin, held her ground. She wasn't running. She was standing on her own property, watching the man who hurt her become a visitor who would leave and not return. 2 officers approached. One of them was Curtis from the station last night. He nodded at me, professional and respectful now. Mr. Boyd, the other officer said, you have 2 hours to collect personal belongings. Clothing, toiletries, personal items only. Nothing jointly purchased. Nothing that belongs to Ms. Boyd. We'll supervise the entire process. Any attempt to communicate with Ms. Boyd will result in immediate arrest. Understood? Brent's jaw clenched. Understood. He went inside. Jacqueline and I stayed on the lawn. You don't have to watch this, I said quietly. Yes, I do. She wrapped her arms around herself. I need to see him leave. Brent made trips to his car, boxes of clothes, his laptop, his golf clubs. Each time he emerged, Jacqueline flinched slightly, then steadied herself. After 90 minutes, he came out with an armload of suits, the ones she'd had dry cleaned for him last week when she still believed maintaining his approval was her responsibility. I saw her hands shake. Almost over, I murmured. Brent closed his trunk, looked toward us, opened his mouth. Curtis stepped immediately between them. No contact, Mr. Boyd. Time to leave. Brent got in his car, started the engine, drove away. His taillights faded in the dusk. Jacqueline let out a breath she'd been holding for 2 years. He's really gone, she whispered. He's really gone. I went to my car and pulled out the deadbolt and door handle sets I'd bought that afternoon. Spent the next hour installing new locks on the front and back doors. Physical security matching the legal protections now in place. Jacqueline helped, held the flashlight, passed me tools. When I finished, I made her practice the locks, over and over until the motions were automatic, until her hands stopped shaking when she turned the key. Inside, we made tea in the spotless kitchen. I watched Jacqueline deliberately move things, shifted a chair, relocated a plant. Small acts of reclaiming space. The house feels different already, she said. Lighter. It's your house now, not his, not ours, yours. She started crying, not desperate sobs, but exhausted tears of someone who'd been holding everything together and could finally let go. I held her hand across the table, let her process grief and relief in whatever ratio they came. I should have called you sooner, she said through tears. I should have left a year ago. I'm sorry Stop. I squeezed her hand. You have nothing to apologize for. He spent 2 years convincing you that you were the problem. That's what abusers do. They make you believe the abuse is your fault. I thought I could handle it alone. I thought if I just tried harder. You handled it perfectly. I looked at her directly. You survived until you could get help. That's not weakness. That's strength. The property hearing the following week was brief. Brent's attorney didn't contest the evidence. The house remained Jacqueline's sole property. The criminal case resolved 2 weeks later. Brent accepted a plea. Guilty to battery, 2 years probation, mandatory completion of an abuser intervention program. He moved to Arizona shortly after. I stayed in San Diego for a month, helped Jacqueline find a good therapist, reconnect with the friends Brent had isolated her from, remember who she was before he convinced her she was nothing. My revenge wasn't about destroying him. It was about restoring her. And I'd used the law, my law, the system I'd served for 30 years, to do it. Quick, precise, and absolutely within the bounds of justice. Exactly the way a judge's revenge should be. I left San Diego on a Thursday in mid-July. Jacqueline walked me to my car, and she looked different. Not just healed, but changed. Stronger. She hugged me, thanked me again. I told her what I'd been telling her for weeks. She'd saved herself. I'd just made sure the system didn't fail her twice. As I drove north toward home, I thought about revenge. The word implies destruction, chaos, emotional satisfaction from another's suffering. But that wasn't what I'd done. I'd used 30 years of judicial knowledge to activate the legal system with surgical precision. I'd called in favors, leveraged relationships, and deployed the law as it was meant to be deployed, to protect the vulnerable and hold the guilty accountable. Brent Boyd wasn't destroyed. He was held responsible. My daughter wasn't avenged. She was restored. That's what justice looks like. That's what a judge's revenge should be. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.